You didn't ask them to change, but they did. Quietly, instinctively, completely. You walked in, no announcement, no energy, no effort. But something shifted. They lowered their voices. They chose their words. They sat straighter. They stopped performing. Not because you told them to, but because your presence left no room for noise. You didn't control them. You didn't correct them. You didn't even engage. But they adjusted. Because the contrast was too clear to ignore. That's cold impact. A silent, contained pressure. That bends behavior without needing a word. In this video, you'll learn how to build that pressure and make people adapt to you without knowing why. Part 1. What is cold impact? Cold impact is when your presence forces calibration without command. You don't speak, you don't move, you don't signal, but the room shifts. Not charisma, not authority, just containment. You don't attract attention. You absorb it, quietly, consistently, without seeking it. There's no effort to impress, no energy to project, just a calm, composed stillness. That disrupts the emotional rhythm around you. Cold impact equals emotional gravity. People feel your presence, but they can't read it, can't predict it, can't label it. So they adjust, they tread softer, they scan their tone, they regulate their posture. Why? Because you're not reacting, and that makes them feel exposed. You don't push, you don't pull, you anchor. Cold impact isn't about pressure, it's about absence of chaos. And when your energy is controlled, quiet, self-contained, everyone else starts managing themselves, not out of fear, out of contrast. The power comes from what you withhold. You don't reveal how you feel. You don't react to social cues. You don't entertain meaningless signals. You just stay present, but inaccessible, and that emotional opacity generates tension, and tension leads to adjustment. This is cold impact, not assertion, not expression, just presence with no leak. And when held correctly, they move first, they soften first, they break rhythm, and you never had to say a word. Part 2. Why people adjust to what feels stable. People don't follow logic, they don't follow status, they follow stability, and in any space, the most emotionally stable person becomes the gravitational center. The brain seeks calibration. In chaotic environments, the mind looks for a fixed point, a signal that says, this is safe, this doesn't change, this won't collapse under pressure. That's the person everyone orients around, even if they don't know why. Most people leak signal. They overexpress, they adjust too fast, they match tone to gain approval. They seek comfort by seeking control. That's instability, that's noise, and noise gets ignored or tuned out. Cold impact doesn't change, so the room does. You don't flinch, you don't mirror, you don't fidget, you just stay still, in body and in energy, and when the rest of the room can't find a predictable rhythm, they slow down to meet yours, not because you asked, but because your stillness feels safer than their chaos. Stability signals strength. When you don't react, people assume control. When you don't fill silence, people assume depth When you don't chase attention, people assume value. Because in human psychology, what doesn't seek validation is seen as already validated. The room regulates itself around the fixed point. You don't lead with commands, you lead by holding still while everything else shifts, and eventually, people lower their volume. They become more careful with their words. They mirror your posture. They self-correct, not because they fear you, but because they feel. They need to match your signal. This is why cold impact works, not by force, not by persuasion, but by presence that stays still, until everything else stabilizes around it. Part 3. The 3 conditions that create cold impact. You don't create cold impact by accident, you build it from within. It's not about what you do, it's about what you don't leak. These are the 3 core conditions that generate invisible pressure. 1. Emotional stillness. You feel nothing extra. Most people leak micro-emotions, nervous energy, approval-seeking tone, need to ease tension, subtle defensiveness. You hold still, internally. You're not suppressing, you're just not reacting. No highs, no need to be liked, no urge to fill silence. You become emotionally unreadable, and unreadable equals unpredictable. Unpredictable equals unsettling. Unsettling equals dominant. 2. Non-reactive energy. You don't respond to the bait. Someone throws sarcasm. You blink slower. Someone tries to provoke. You pause longer. Someone speeds up the tempo. You slow it down. This non-reaction isn't passive. It's structural resistance. You're not engaging on their frequency. You're forcing them to adjust to yours without saying a word. And that silence becomes control. 3. Grounded posture. Your body matches your energy. No shifting weight, no looking around, no nervous tics. You're not stiff. You're anchored, feet planted, back tall, breath slow. You're not trying to signal anything. You're just not moving unnecessarily. And when you don't move, they do. Their body reacts first, then their tone, then their words, all adapting to your grounded presence. When these 3 align, emotional stillness, energetic non-reaction, physical groundedness, you create a signal so clean, so quiet, so heavy. The room tilts toward you without realizing it. No words, no effort, just frame, just force. Part 4. Practical signs you've triggered cold impact. Cold impact isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention, but it always leaves a mark. And when it lands, the room shifts. Here's how to know it's working. 1. The room quiets itself. You didn't say calm down. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't even look around. But suddenly, the tone drops. The volume softens. The tempo slows down. That's not coincidence. That's containment. Your stillness just reset the rhythm. 2. People check themselves. They fumble mid-sentence. They rephrase what they were about to say. They pause before making a joke. They glance at you for micro-approval. Even if you're not watching, they're not reacting to words. They're reacting to your unspoken weight. You didn't correct them, but they corrected themselves anyway. 3. You create spatial respect. Without asking, people keep their distance. They don't crowd. They don't overstep. They give you room. Because your energy doesn't invite access. It sets a boundary without saying, back off. 4. People mirror your calm. At first, they're animated. They're expressive. They're fast. Then they notice your pace, your breathing, your grounded presence. And without realizing it, they start matching it. Now their voice is lower, their tone softer, their movements slower. They're syncing with you because your frequency is clearer than theirs. 5. They start asking without being asked. They defer to you, even when no hierarchy was defined. They say, "What do you think? You've been quiet. What's your take? Should we go with that?" That's not politeness. That's energy hierarchy. They feel you're holding something, and they're drawn to it, even if they don't know why. Final signal. If they're speaking softer, sitting straighter, checking their tone, and watching your stillness, you've already shifted the field, and cold impact is live. Part 5. How to use cold impact strategically. Cold impact isn't passive, it's precise. You don't just stay calm, you deploy calm as a strategic field of influence. Here's how to use it with intent. 1. Enter with zero signal. When you walk into a room, don't lead with energy, don't scan, don't project, lead with containment. Your presence says, "I'm not here to be read, I'm here to be felt." Let the contrast hit them before you say a word. 2. Claim space without claiming attention. Find your seat, stand your ground, hold posture, no shifting weight, no unnecessary movements, no over-smiling, no tension releases. You're not performing, you're stabilizing the room by becoming its stillest point. 3. Don't speak first, but when you do, make it shift. Hold silence, let others fill the space. Then, when the tension peaks, say one thing, clear, measured, calm. The weight of that one sentence will exceed everything said before it, because you built gravity in silence, and then broke it with precision. 4. In conflict, don't match energy, absorb it. When others escalate, you slow down, you blink less, you pause longer. Let them realize they're the only one bleeding energy. They'll adjust. Not because you fought, but because you didn't. 5. Use stillness as social pressure. In group settings, you don't need to challenge bad behavior. You don't need to correct tone. You just go still. And that stillness, held long enough, forces the room to recalibrate. No one wants to be the only one, still out of sync, when your silence is setting the pace. This isn't passivity, it's dominance through absence of noise. Cold impact is your shield, and when used right, it becomes the room's center of balance. Final CTA. You didn't raise your voice, you didn't take up more space, you didn't react. You just stayed still, neutral, unmoved, and yet they adjusted. Their tone softened, their behavior changed, their attention shifted. Not because you spoke, but because your silence left no room for instability. This is cold impact. No commands, No emotional pressure. No social dominance. Just internal gravity. That bends everything around it. You don't need to control the room. You just need to become the one thing the room can't ignore. And once you hold that frequency, they won't know why they're adjusting, but they will every time.